Greetings, fellow gorehounds, and welcome back to another Blood Splattered vlog. I'm the Horror Guru,
And I'm Count Jackula.
and we just watched Last Shift, which is a horror movie from last year. Which it's the second horror movie from last year we saw about essentially a haunted police station. Basically, the plot is about this officer who, on her first day of the job, is basically she's stuck with the shit job of watching over the old police station while they're transferring into a new one. So she's got the night shift, and she's stuck in there, and it turns out the place is a bit haunted.
Yep.
So to get into the non-spoiler review, this is a really creepy, really scary, really effective horror movie with a really, really unsatisfying ending.
Yeah. It ends on it's a great movie that ends on a wet fart.
That's a good way to put it. So I mean, if you want to watch this movie, we do recommend it because it is scary, but you kind of got to be warned that you might be disappointed in the end. It's not that the ending doesn't make sense.
The ending makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect logical sense with the progression of the movie. It just is kind of the least satisfying option they could have gone with outside of it all being in her head. And it's not that, so don't worry about that.
Yeah. The big problem with the end is that when you get right down to it, like everything looks like it's leading up to this moment where the movie goes completely off the rails and goes completely goddamn insane to the point where you're just like, oh my God! Like you were expecting a dude's head to crack open and the fucking demons to literally fly out.
Something like that, or even if they couldn't afford something like that, at least something nuts.
Yeah. Like at least like give us the end of like Lords of Salem.
Yeah, or even
kinds of insanity.
Or even the Last Exorcism. I know a lot of people didn't like that ending, but like that at least had like a bit of a crazy final scene.
Yeah. But spoilers in the Last Exorcism, the devil is real. Like that's
But like at least something like that, or like you said, but unfortunately, we don't get that. We get something that ramps up and then kind of ends in a logical way, but not a very satisfying way.
Yeah. The other thing that's weird is that when we get to the last 5 minutes, all of a sudden it feels like a different movie.
Yeah, that also is a problem.
That was very strange because like that's really abrupt because up until that point, it's this very good methodical creeper where fucked up and gory things happen.
Yeah.
You'll notice right away when you start it, you're going to be watching it and you're like, wow, this feels like a really good horror video game.
Yeah, like a Resident Evil or like Resident Evil 1.
Yeah, like Resident Evil 1 or like Silent Hill.
There's a lot of over-the-shoulder shots of the cop as she's walking through the place, and like she'll like find little pieces to the puzzle, like oh hey, you find open locker. Do you open locker? You open locker. Okay. You find a little picture. Do you keep picture or do you put picture back? It's got like it's got that feel, but you're watching it all happen. And because it's this one girl for most of the time, there's really very little dialogue outside of a couple key moments. So most of it is her just kind of walking around and creepy shit happening around her or in front of her.
Yeah, and it's actually very effective if like you're gonna use that kind of, make the movie kind of look like a video game intentionally or not. It's very well done.
Mm-hmm.
But you get to the last scene and you're like, that's
it's so too bad because up until that point it was like a straight up 10 out of 10, like fucking scary ass movie. Like there are points where I jumped out of my skin. I was like, holy shit. And there were moments where I was literally creeped out, and there were moments where I was so on edge that like my heart started fucking racing while things were happening.
It's extremely effective right up until that last moment, and then
And it's amazing how much my perception of the movie completely dropped by that just really kind of dull ending, and because I was so excited for the movie up until that point.
Yeah. It's like I said, it's a second movie that takes its cues from both Assault on Precinct 13 and
definitely.
Prince of Darkness.
Yeah, most definitely.
Although probably what be a little more apt is to say this is Assault on Precinct 13 mixed with Hellraiser.
Yeah, Hellraiser and a bit of Devil's Rejects, actually.
Yeah, there is a bit of Devil's Rejects.
Mainly because Devil's Rejects and this kind of have a common ancestry in the Manson murders. And with that, I think we should start with the spoilers.
Yeah,
so,
spoiler time.
Spoilers. Alrighty then, so basically the reason why this place is haunted is because there was a group of Manson-like killers, this one creepy like hippie-looking dude and these girls that followed him who were taken in, and supposedly the story is that they were killed on the scene, but the real story is that the cops brought them back to the precinct and they hung themselves. Which, on one hand, I didn't understand if they were going to take them back to the precinct. Why wasn't the story they beat them to death or something? Because that would be like, Because otherwise, why did they bring them back? Like, why did they cover up the story? Like, I didn't understand why they covered up the story. And that part was a little, So she is now being haunted by the ghosts of these demons.
Yeah. It's another haunted house story where it's actually demons.
Yeah.
And as far as like why they covered it up, I get the feeling that it was basically the circumstances behind their suicide were so weird. They thought it was just easier to just say, look, they died in an escape attempt.
Oh, okay, because of all the satanic shit.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I can buy that. Okay. But so she's being haunted by all these things, but it also turns out that she is the daughter of one of the cops that brought them in.
Yep.
Specifically one of the cops that died in the line of duty bringing them in.
Yep.
So she's got a bit of a history with these killers, even though they've never seen each other face to face. And so they're basically fucking with her the entire movie. They're sending fake calls to the precinct, even though it's supposed to be routed to another precinct, but she still keeps getting the calls. So she keeps calling the other precinct, going, "Hey, we're still getting calls over here," and they're like, "No, you're not." Like. And so she's like, am I losing my mind? What the fuck's going on? But she keeps getting these creepy calls of this girl in the woods that's like being chased by a guy with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
And while this is happening, she's being chased by this ghostly demon who looks like she just got beaten with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
Her arms are all out of place and they're all like cracking as she moves. And it's very unsettling and uncomfortable as it happens.
Yeah, the sound design of the movie is really good.
That's probably the person who needs the most praise for this movie above all else is the sound designer, because this movie sounds amazing. In fact, it would probably be really great to watch with headphones on.
Yeah.
Like, really get the full effect. If you can't watch it in a theater, which unfortunately it was like straight to video.
Yeah,
I think.
like straight to video.
Yeah,
like
so you can watch it on Netflix right now, so it's there. God, like, it's just that ending, man.
Yeah. The ending is that basically in the beginning, the guy who leaves her in charge is like, by the way, hazmat team's coming to collect all the really bad evidence.
Yeah.
That needs to be handled by hazmat.
Which you know is going to come back at some point.
Yeah, and by the end of the story, after the demons happen, and the demons are really freaky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got these like bags on their faces, but you can also see they carve pentagrams into their face.
Yeah, and like the bags have kind of, in some places, have kind of become their face.
Yeah, and they got like these monster teeth, and they just look all fucked up and just contorted.
And the leader of the cult has got like an upside down pentagram carved into his face.
It's fucking gnarly.
Yeah,
and it is, and it's shot in a really good way too. They actually did that. Like at one point, they do that like. In the late 90s, there was this tendency with ghost movies to have the ghosts do these really weird, like twitchy, like sped up effects, and they do that a couple times here, and it actually works. Unlike a lot of those movies, I don't know if it was just the staging or if it was just the right timing.
Well, a lot of what they did to build up to that was the fact that the audience sees things that the main character doesn't.
Yeah, that's also true.
You know,
there's a lot of dynamite at the foot of the bed in this movie.
Yeah, and he uses it really, really well. You know, because so many times when she's like walking down the corridor, like there'll be a ghost following her that she never sees.
Yeah. All right, actually, bomb under the table. That's what I'm thinking of. Not dynamite at the foot of the bed. Sorry. There's a lot of that going on. But like at the end of the movie, she gets a call from her ghost dad, who's just like, "You gotta finish what I started. You gotta put an end to them before they
finish what I started.
Yeah,
put the roofie in your drink
before they summon the King of Hell." And so you're like, "Oh shit, the King of Hell is coming. Shit's getting real."
Yeah.
But it kind of turns out the King of Hell is kind of the blonde dude, which is a
the
little
leader
underwhelming.
Of the cult.
Yeah,
like if you look at the leader of the cult, if you're like, if that guy's a cult leader, that looks awesome. But if he's the King of Hell, that's lame.
That's a little disappointing. So it's like, oh, the King of Hell's coming, yada yada yada, and it's like, oh, and they also establish that there's other cult members who weren't killed in the initial attack. And so a bunch of them seemingly show up, and one fucking shoots herself in the fucking head.
Yep.
Because of the coming of the King of Hell. But a couple other ones show up with the bags on their head, and so she shoots them and kills them. But then as she kills the last one, she gets shot, and she turns around, and it's the cop that let her that let her have the job. What do you call him? Her superior officer.
Superior officer.
Her superior officer. And she looks at him like, why? And then she looks at the guy she just killed, and it's one of the hazmat teams. And then she has this whole flashback that goes through the whole scenario, and it turns out she was just killing members of the hazmat team that arrived, which makes logical sense.
Yeah. It made narrative sense, but that bit.
But then she dies, and the ghosts show up to take her soul, and it makes logical sense. The ghosts are essentially setting her up to take her life so that they can claim her among them. Because they also established that the ghosts are saying to the cops that we're going to take everything you love. So if they take one of the cops who died in taking them in's daughter, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it felt like the movie was ramping up to like the King of Hell rising.
Yeah. Like she was gonna descend into hell, or she was gonna have some insane, like fucking altered state style vision, or
like it was
something.
Gonna go full on like the church or something, just something insane.
Yeah,
and it just kind of ends there, and we're like,
you know what it is? It's that alternate ending to fucking Paranormal Activity.
Oh yeah, the one where the cops just come in.
Yeah, and you're just like, well, that makes sense, but that.
It's kind of
sucks.
It's kind of dull.
Yeah.
It's kind of disappointing. You kind of want more. I kind of prefer the theatrical cut, the one that Spielberg suggested. Way better ending.
Yeah, despite the fact that it like fucking inspired a bunch of really shitty imitations.
Oh, sure,
like,
sure.
When it happened that first time, it was like Blair Witch. When we did it the first time, it was awesome.
When you're king, you're gonna inspire a whole bunch of imitators.
Yeah,
you know that same thing happened to Halloween, and some of them were shitty, some of them were good. You know.
Yeah.
Same thing happened to Nightmare. There's a lot of shitty imitations of Nightmare.
Oh, like 976 Evil.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yes. You know that constantly happens. Or how many shitty imitations of Scream there were.
Oh.
You know,
most of them being "I Know What You Did Last Summer" sequels,
or the shitty knockoffs of Hostel and Saw that gave the entire genre that bad reputation.
Oh fucking! I'll never forgive Turistas.
Yeah, a good example.
So bad.
You know, so Paranormal Activity, I don't blame for what followed it because I feel like that's a really immature, stupid thing to do.
Yeah,
what followed it is the problem, not it.
Yeah, exactly. But this one,
yeah, I just wanted more. Like, it was a great build-up, but then it just kind of ends. And it's not as bad as, like, something like The Devil Inside, but...
oh, no, it's not that bad, but the build-up to the disappointment in Devil Inside is not as big, because it was already only kind of a middle-of-the-road
Exactly.
movie. This was like, we're knocking it out of the park, A+, 10 out of 10, and then...
Yeah, exactly. Like, I expected, like, there would be a moment where she turns down a hallway and the whole hallway is turned into hell.
Yeah.
You know, like hell is opened up and she's got to go in and she's got to kill the king of hell or the guy who's going to be the conduit for the king of hell.
Yeah, something like that.
And finish her father's work. I actually thought that would have been a better ending.
It would have been a better ending,
if it was actually her dad telling her to finish her work and finish what he started so that the rest of the world could be saved, and then have them take her soul that way. Like, she does that, and then she's trapped in hell, but she saved the world. Like,
that would have worked. That would have been great.
Like, it would have been really cool. It would have been harder to do on a budget reason, so I understand why they might not have, but it seems like this was the ending they had intended from the get-go, and I'm not a big fan of it. It makes complete logical sense, and I get what they're going for, but this movie was almost a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, it almost was. There were actually a lot of people who were telling us that, like, everything about this movie is great until you get to the ending.
Yeah.
And we were like, as we were watching it, we're like, wow, this has got to be one fucking piece of dog shit of an ending.
Yeah.
Because this movie so far is fantastic.
Exactly.
And then we got to it, and they were right.
We were also, like, when we went to go watch it, because it was on Netflix, and we're like, hey, we can finally watch this. We've got a couple requests for this. We got some on one of the last vlogs we did.
Yeah.
And then we're like, okay, we'll do it. And we're looking at Netflix, and we're like, whoa, that is a really low fucking score on it.
Yeah.
Like, the score put it at, like there was, I think it was, 1 or 2 stars, and we're like, that's fucking low. Like, what's going on here based on all the recommendations we got? And then that ending happened, and we're like, oh, now we get it.
Yeah.
No matter how good the movie is, that ending actually does kind of suck the wind out of you.
Yeah.
In the worst way possible. It's where you're just like, oh, man, I want to recommend this movie, but now I have this really big caveat.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it's like, hey, this is really great ride,
Yeah.
but the ending sucks.
And there's some really fucking great moments. There's a scene in this where she's walking down the hallway, and we can see behind her as the creepy girl who's been beaten with a baseball bat is like cracking along the floor in this weird contorted manner that's so unnatural looking, but it's obviously done practically, so you can
Yeah.
tell it's happening. It's just, oh, geez, and the sound design's getting you. And she goes down this hallway, and she turns around and it's gone. But then she looks around, and inside the door are all these girls sitting in a circle with these bags and these mutilated bags on their head, and they're all singing the creepy theme of the movie. And they all turn and look at her, but their reflections in the window still stay the
Yeah.
same. And it's so fucking good and effective. It's so well done. It's like master work. It's like a master at work here. And then you get to that ending, and you're
Yeah.
like, God damn it! Like, this movie was one of the scariest movies I've seen in a long time. I'm watching it with a group of friends, and I'm getting scared, and that rarely happens when you're watching with friends.
No, it is legitimately
Yeah.
legitimately a scary movie.
Yeah,
It's just that the ending of the story is bad.
yeah, yeah. And plus, there's a couple like questions I kind of wanted answered. You know, like I kind of would have liked to know like what the hobo was about.
Yeah.
Like, was he just crazy? There's a point in the movie where a hobo shows up inside and pisses on the floor, and she kicks him out. And then later on in the movie, she hears a break-in, and she hears a whole bunch of rattling going on. You're like, oh shit, is it the ghost? And it turns out to be the hobo just knocking shit over and whatever. So she throws him in this cell. And the hobo fights her, and she knocks him out with a taser. And then she gets trapped in the cell and has this spooky vision of these creepy ghost girls. Oh, it felt like something right out of Silent Hill.
Yeah.
With these lights, and they grab her light, and it's the only light in the room, and she's
Yeah.
like, what's got the light? And then she looks over, and like the hobo's still asleep, and so she's like, oh fuck, who has the light? And it's
Yeah.
really well done. And then she finally gets out, and she locks the door. And then later, the hobo's inside screaming, "Let me out! Let me out!" And she moves out of the way, and they're all hanging there. The cult is all hanging there dead, like fucking convulsing like this. And he's like, "Let me the fuck out!" So you get the impression that the hobo is real.
Yeah.
He's one of the few people that she encounters over this journey that is actually a real person. At least that's the impression I got.
Yeah. Like her and maybe the hooker
Yeah.
that she runs into briefly, which I was amazed didn't come back.
Yeah, and then later on, she runs into the cell again, and he's been hung.
Yeah.
Like, he's dead. Either he hung himself or the ghosts, hung him. You're not entirely sure. And you're like, what? Was he just a crazy hobo? Or did he have some sort of connection to what was going on? Or was there a reason he was knocking shit about? Like,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. One of the things that confused me about the hooker that she runs into was we go to the trouble of giving her a name.
Yeah, and
She's
a backstory.
name and a backstory. And I'm like, okay, well, that's going to come back. And usually if you're going to do that kind of thing, red herring style, something that she said is going to be wrong, but everything she told her was absolutely 100% correct.
Yeah, and I felt like that hooker would have been a better setup if she was the cult member who walks in and knocks her out, drags her into the other room, and then shoots herself in the head.
Yeah.
Like, if she was the one who did that, then that setup would have been great.
Yeah.
But otherwise, she just kind of felt like she was shoehorned in, because it's like, oh, we gotta put some exposition here, but how do we do that? Well, let's just put a hooker outside. And we're like, it would have been better if she was one of the ghosts.
Yeah.
Like,
If she had been one of the ghosts.
Oh, that reminds me of one of the creepiest fucking moments in this movie. A cop shows up and knocks on the door, and he's like, "Hey, I was sent by the superior officer to check on you." And so they talk, and she's a little on edge, but she's determined to prove herself to the other officers. So she doesn't want
to. This is before everything really goes down.
Yeah, so she doesn't want to admit weakness, and she also doesn't want to be seen as crazy. So she's not quite admitting things that have been going on, but she at least talks about the weird calls she's been getting. And the guy kind of admits that, actually, I kind of volunteered to come and check on you because I knew your father. In fact, like, he saved my life when we brought in the creepy cult guys, and we lost a couple officers that day, and your father's a real hero, and I just wanted to let you know that he would have been proud of you, and that that you should be proud of him and what he did and all that stuff. I'm like, oh man, this is a really great moment. And then he turns around and there's a bullet hole in the back of his head. And that's the moment where you remember, oh, he said a couple of cops died that day. And you're like, oh shit. And then like he walks around this corridor, and the way the corridor is set up, there is a window that you can see on the other side, and there's this wall right here, and she's right here, and the camera is right behind her over her shoulder. So he walks around the corner, walks over here, and then never comes out the other side. And it's this really great, effective, creepy moment that I literally did not see coming.
Yeah, no, I didn't either.
Like, it was one of those moments where it caught me off guard, because I thought I was prepared for everything, and then when that happened, I was like, holy shit! I think I actually did that. Verbally.
Yeah. They managed to pull off the trick that Sixth Sense did again. They managed to pull that trick off again.
The Sixth Sense, that's where I saw that kind of bit before. Yeah, they did that too in there. And it was really well done. It was really fucking effective. And so you kind of expected that okay, well, maybe the creepy hooker is either a ghost, because they do set up that she had some sort of backstory with the creepy cult, that she was in the cell next to them when they killed themselves.
Yeah, she's the witness to what the cult did.
Which, if there's all these people who know everything that happened there, how was that kept under wraps for so long?
Yeah, exactly. It's really strange, because you're like, all right, I mean, you're willing to go with it just because we have a ghost story going on here, so we need people to kind of not believe what is happening, otherwise it doesn't work and it just becomes an adventure tale.
Yeah.
You know, so I kind of get it, but like, I was amazed that she didn't come back, because having her come back is like, the cultist that shoots her, that commits suicide in front of
that would have been a great setup.
Yeah, it would have been fine. You'd been like, oh. You would have been like, I had a feeling something was up with her.
Yeah,
but it still would have been great.
And the problem is the way that character's set up, you kind of feel like there's like this question mark around her, like, oh, is there something more to this or whatever?
Yeah.
You know, so that would have answered that and would have been less of this like just up in the air kind of feeling you get with some of these things.
But the hooker's is just an exposition red herring.
Yeah, she is.
And it was really sad, because I was like, there's so many things you could do with that character that would enhance shit that happens in the latter half of the movie.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And because they established that the cult leader has a bunch of girls following him, it would have made sense. It would have been cool. And so, some other really things I really loved about this movie. I love the scene. There's a scene where she goes into essentially the boardroom where they say, oh, we're gonna go storm this house, and so they put it on the whiteboard.
Yeah.
They go into that boardroom, and all the chairs are flying at her. But when she turns around and the chair flies past her, all of a sudden there's a person sitting in the chair, like one of those girls going. Hee! It's a really ghoulish and fun and scary sequence.
Yeah. It's a really good. The whole thing is a really good. Like, if you're into filmmaking or the staging of scary scenes in like movies or television or video games, this movie should absolutely be studied. Yeah, you should absolutely study this movie.
And I'm looking forward to whatever these guys make more.
Whatever
their next projects are, because I mean, hey, maybe the next one will have a better ending.
Yeah, because we don't know what happened with that ending. All we know is that it was unsatisfying, and right as it got bad, it felt like all of a sudden it was a different movie entirely.
Yeah.
You know, so we don't know what that means. Did they run out of money? Did they have to do reshoots? What? You know, we have no idea. It could turn out like it was like a fucking Red State situation where they were like, what do you mean we don't have the money for the fucking ending? What happened? And
it could have been.
It could have been anything, you know? But it was really... But as it stands, it's a really great movie with an equally disappointing ending.
Yeah, kind of good way to put it.
You know, and that's what's so frustrating about this movie. It makes it good to talk about, because you're like, wow, all these things that the movie did well.
Well, the only problem with talking about it
sucks.
The only problem with talking about it is that I want to talk more about the stuff I loved about the movie, but that ending keeps hanging over everything.
Yeah, it does. It does.
It
brings a pall over every fucking thing.
Yeah, there's this great moment where she's looking down this hallway, and this like body bag like starts to slide down the hallway almost.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
Almost fucking Nightmare on Elm Street style.
Yeah.
And but then it turns out it's not really a body bag. It's one of the people in the mask, and they fly upwards marionette style, and their body is all contorted, and they start walking down the hallway in this really unnatural way.
Like a demon is literally puppeting it from above.
And it is fucking creepy, man. Like, I think I heard Jack go like, "Oh God, that's creepy." Like,
yeah.
like,
Yeah, I freaked out because like you're like, oh, it's a body bag that's dragging
Yeah.
itself, and then it stands up. You're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh.
You know, and God, this movie is so fucking good. Like, the only thing they could have done that would have been worse if they just made it just straight up everything in her head. But that's
Yeah,
not
that
the-
would have been worse, but that's unfortunately only a degree of bad.
Yeah, but I just I don't know.
This is an extremely, for me, this is an extremely caveated recommendation.
Yeah.
Which is, I think you should watch it just so you can get the scares of
Absolutely.
the movie itself. But realize that you're probably not gonna like where the movie ultimately goes because it kind of sucks.
Yep.
So thumbs kind of sideways.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
You know, which is really too bad.